Welcome back to RoboCorn Rewind. This is episode 5, written and produced by the RoboCorns. I'm your host, ANANYA SINGHAL.
And I'm ANUSHKA CHAKRABORTY.
This week, we've got even more highlights from the East, Central, and West Region League meets.
You guessed it, we have an interview with a local FGC team and a statewide leaderboard at the end. But first, we have a brand new addition to the show called Career Connections, where we interview people from a STEM field each week. Here is the teaser to the very first episode.
How do you use the design process on a daily basis as a part of what you do?
So I actually have a small example or something similar to that. So I don't know how well you can see, but I made this little piece this week.
Wow.
And it's made of A2 steel, which is very tough steel. And these little prongs that are super small are meant to fit inside of a bolt head.
Oh.
And there's 2 of them. So they pick up the bolt and they move it. I don't know what else it does after that because I don't need to know. But because these prongs are like relatively small and they're constantly like banging and banging and banging on these giant bolts, we had to get a little creative in thinking long-term process.
Now to Lacia with the East League highlights.
Thanks, Anushka, and hey everyone! This week we're essentially going to be covering an entire match. We're going to look at the autonomous of Out of the Box, the teleop of the RaiderBots, and the endgame of the RoboCorns. Let's get right into it. Now, like I said, we're looking at the autonomous of Out of the Box. Right here, they go for those power shots after dropping down their intake, and their third ring ricochets to hit that second power shot down fully as well as the third one. They pick up one of the rings that is dropped while hitting the power shots, and they drop off their wobble. Now going for that second wobble, they use that time to pick up that one ring that's there from their stack, and they shoot the 2 rings that they have in hand. Now just before time runs out, they drop off that wobble that they just picked up and park just in time. Now we have the teleop of the RaiderBots. Now they just finished Auton and they're getting ready to drive. Right as teleop starts, they do that same blocking strategy that I've been talking about for the past few weeks. Their human player rolls out all the rings as fast as they can, and they have a ton of rings right there in front of their intake. With a really fast intake, they're able to block out other rings and stacks and easily are able to pick up just 3 rings to make sure they don't get the 4 rings or to make sure that none of the rings really get jammed. When they shoot, they go at a slight angle just to the right after picking up, and it's working out great for them so they don't have to go around the entire field. You can see that all the rings are just in that one small circle or bubble around the robot. They don't go outside of that because their robot just blocks all the rings that come in from the human player. They simply pick up, turn just the slightest bit, shoot, and they come back. So they have a really great fast cycle right there, which is why they're able to get so many points. So one thing that RaiderBots does is they don't really focus on the endgame portion, because in endgame, they didn't go to pick up the 2 wobbles, but rather they just kept going with teleop because they have really fast cycles. They have no trouble picking up rings around the wobble because the wobble doesn't knock down even if they go near there. They drive just around it in a certain orientation. They have really consistent shooting and haven't missed any of the rings yet. So now we have the end game of the RoboCorns. They just finished up picking 3 rings and are going to get one of the wobbles. After getting the wobble, they aligned for the power shots and they lined with communication with the human player and hit the first one perfectly. Now going for the second one, the robot misturned, but they recovered from that and hit the third one, which ricocheted and hit the second one as well. After dropping off the 1 wobble they had in hand, they went for the last wobble, but time ran out. That's all for the Eastern League this week, and I hope you've enjoyed. I can't wait to see what they bring back next week for the last league meet. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Lacia. Show us the Central League, Adi.
Sure thing, ANANYA. So for the Central League today, we're going to be covering 3 different teams: To Be Determined, Vortec, and the Javengers. I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started. So first up here, we have a team called To Be Determined, and as you can see, they have a pretty unconventional wobble grabber. It allows them to pick up the wobble and hold it horizontally, and then drop it down with stability. Specifically, their wobble grabber is a horizontal cascading slide. They have a pivot mechanism that actually allows them to drop the wobble in a vertical position. Then they're going to slide over and they're going to shoot their 3 preloaded rings into the mid goal. Once they've done that, they're going to park on the line and end autonomous. A pretty solid autonomous from To Be Determined. So next up we have VorTech and a pretty strong teleop to be specific. So as you just saw, they're picking up 3 rings and they're going to back up behind the shoot line and shoot them. And what you notice about their shooter is it's very fast. And what allows them to be this fast is that they don't actually stack the rings. They keep them next to each other. So all they have to do is push them all out continuously rather than having them in a stack and having to push one out underneath each other. So finally here we have the one and only Javengers doing the blocking technique, a technique that's getting really popular within teams today. And it consists of you and your robot standing in front of the human player station and blocking every ring that comes out of the randomizer, creating a pool of rings right in front of you so that you can minimize your cycle times. And as you can see, the Javengers are doing a great job at it. Well, unfortunately, that's all the clips that we had for the Central League. I hope you all enjoyed all of them and learned something too, ranging from wobble movers to fast shooters and some really good game strategy. Well, on to you, Anushka.
Thanks, Adi. Now, nearing the end of the league meets, we really see a lot of teams striving for success, which is great. Now over to Brighton with the West League.
Starting off with Team 1656, the Digital Devils. Digital Devils have an opposite side intake and shooter. That means they intake on one side and have a shooter on the other side, which is pretty interesting. It's one of the only robots we've seen this year with that design. Another interesting thing about the Digital Devils is their wobble mover. Their wobble mover is essentially a side panel of their robot that they lift up and grab the wobble with. This was their high scoring match with 270 points. Good job, Digital Devils. Now on the Team 8645, the Robotic Doge. One of the things that make the Robotic Doge special is their really fast intake. This allows them to have significantly faster cycle times. Another interesting thing about the robot that not many robots have done this year is their magazine. Their magazine lowers to accept rings from the intake and then raises up so the rings can be shot. The Robotic Doge height score this meet was 324 points. Now on the Team 8393 Brainstem. Brainstem set the world record in meet 4 of 574 points. This is the match that we'll be reviewing today. One of the coolest things about Brainstem is their dual intakes. They have 2 intakes, one on the back which allows them to pick up rings and shoot them at the same time during autonomous. The other intake on the front is specifically designed to pick up rings that are vertical coming straight out of the chute. One of the major improvements Brainstem has made over the past few meets has been their shooting. Their shooting is significantly more consistent. They miss very few rings in this meet, which allows them to have such a high score. One of the coolest things about the robot is obviously their turret. Their turret moves as the robot strafes side to side to stay locked onto the center of the high goal. That's it for the West League recap. Thanks for watching.
As always, huge thanks to Lasya, Brighton, and Adi for their input on the highlight clips from this week. Now to Simran for our interview with Team 6964 IGUTECH.
Welcome to the 5th interview of RoboCorn Rewind. It's crazy to think that we're already 5 episodes in. Don't forget to stream the season finale next Thursday, April 1st. So today we have an outstanding team from the Central League, IGUTECH. Take a moment to introduce yourself.
I'm Brian. I'm the hardware lead for Team IGUTECH, and I'm also the team lead.
Awesome. It's great to have you guys on the show. I heard that you built some really amazing mechanical components on your robot. I'm really interested to know what they are.
Yeah, so we started because of COVID and a lot of that kind of stuff, we started really early with CAD. So we designed the whole thing in CAD, and that led us to create some pretty interesting stuff here. So our shooter is really cool. We have these 3D printed bevel views, and that allows us they're very low friction, which is pretty surprising. And then we have this grip wall on the opposite side here. And so our intake is also, it's a little bit damaged right now, but there's like a lot going on under here. So you have like a ton of belts all all over to power all the rollers.
Yeah, it's clear to me that these innovative mechanical parts really help you on the field. I was actually watching some of your match videos, and I noticed that you have incredibly efficient cycle times, and your intake is amazing. For those of you at home who may not have seen the way IGUTECH's intake works, once they touch a ring, they own it. So you talked a little about CAD, but could you tell me a little more about your design process and how these mechanical parts turn from ideas into actual robot elements?
Yes, sure. So at the beginning of the season, we always focus on like the main task, right? So last year it was picking up the blocks and stacking them. And this year we knew that we had to intake them and shoot them out quickly. So we kind of built our entire design around that. So we started with a bigger shooter, and we realized that we couldn't really package it with the intake well. So we moved on, and we kind of just developed everything as fast as we could initially until we found something that worked. And then we slowed down to make sure that it was all perfect. And it's still not perfect yet, and it never is, but we're going to be working on that still.
How did these parts assist with efficiency on the field?
Yeah, so when you 3D print things, you can make them act however you want. So the entire team has gotten really good at like visualizing how and what ways a part would break. So one of the issues we had initially was our intake was kind of long. There was 3 rollers. So there was one here, and one here. And it was pretty long outside of the robot. And whenever we hit like a wall or something, the entire thing would just shatter. So we knew that we had to strengthen it. So we came up with we designed it out of polycarbon, CNC'd it, and that was pretty cool.
Do these like parts all work consistently with one another? Like, is it kind of like your robot, like every part just helps one another out?
Yeah, so if right here, so one of the shooters where this is like really cool. So there's 4 4 3D printed parts in here, and it's all in like a little sandwich. And all these parts were designed with tolerances and all of that to make sure that it fit really well, and it ended up working pretty well.
Yeah. So I miss in-person competitions because we could just walk around and see robots like yours compete in real life and make alliances, which actually brings me to my next question. Just like any other season, it's extremely important that you have enough time to build, drive, and code. How did COVID get in the way of all of this, and how does your team work around it?
So it actually I don't think it affected us as much as it affected other teams, because we only had, like last year we have meetings every week. So on Sunday we met for 4 hours. This year on Sunday we met for 2 hours. So it was a little less time, but we also got much more efficient at designing things outside of the meetings. So that allowed us to just say, oh, hey, Brian, can you print something on the printer? And we would be able to make that pretty quick and put it together without everyone being there. So it's pretty good.
That's nice to hear. So you said earlier that you were the hardware lead and also like your team lead. So you're obviously involved with the build process, but could you go into a little more about your personal role on the team?
Yeah, so I pretty much, I do a lot of the CAD stuff. So initially it's like teaching people CAD, all of that kind of stuff. Also, I worked on the initial design of the robot because that's really where it's most important, to get everyone down at the beginning of the season, say, hey, what are we thinking here? And once you get a strong idea of that, then you can get running. So that's kind of where my focus is until we pass that stage.
I heard that there are IGUTECH FLL teams. I'm not sure, but do you by any chance mentor them, or are they related to your?
Yeah, so IGUTECH started a long time ago, and it was initially an FLL team. It branched out to 2 FLL teams, and then we started an FTC and an FLL team. So all of the previous FTC kids have graduated a few years ago, and all of the FLL kids moved up to FTC. So we don't have an FLL team anymore, but we were all involved with FLL.
So you were part of an FLL team?
Yeah. I think everyone on the team right now was part of IGUTECH FLL.
That's actually really cool because our RoboCorns team we're all from FLL. Well, most of us. Well, that's it for today. Thank you to IGUTECH for joining us. Make sure to tune in for our final episode next week, where I have a sit down with the team that holds the world record. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to Brian from IGUTECH for taking part in the show today. Now it's time for our statewide leaderboard. Let's see it.
It is great to see teams posting more and more videos of their robots and matches, and they are looking amazing. That's it for today's episode of RoboCorn Rewind, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. Make sure to check out this week's full episode of Career Connections, also posted on our channel. We'll see you next time.